If you say it's national security, you can justify practically anything. This is what concerns me. And Obama waited 11 days to talk about it.
This was a global tragedy.
That to me is just weird. Like, that screams, we gotta come up with a cover story. I can't get caught in a lie.
If your theory's right, and the United States government utilized a direct energy weapon or a teleportation, whatever you want to call it, to teleport this plane with 239 civilian passengers to Diego Garcia Military Base, and they were either killed or held hostage or still hostage, that would not have happened without the approval of the President of the United States. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of The Resilience Show, and I am here with our guest, Ashton Forbes. And if you guys don't know who Ashton is, he has been the lead investigator in Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 and the disappearance of it in 2014, am I right?
Yep.
And man, if you want to go down a deep rabbit hole, you can spend hours and hours and hours watching Ashton's videos and studying, following his research, and it's just compelling. And I've become hooked. So it's we kind of a teaser to the audience. We have had you part of Shadow Figures, and if the audience doesn't know, I think we've already leaked it out to most of them. We have an upcoming show it's going to be a network, and it's called Shadow Figures, where we talk to guys like you who are shadow figures who propose a theory of some mystery or conspiracy or just some wild story, and then I put together a team of special operations veterans to go investigate or test that theory. And we took Malaysia Flight 370, and we took your theories, and we put a team together to go test it. And it was just a great time, and I really am excited for that episode to come out. But before it does, we get to do this. We get to do the Resilience Show and talk about MH370. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, no problem. And I saw the teaser for the show, so it's going to be amazing, guys. Don't miss it.
Yeah. I'm pumped. It's but I got to tell you, of all the episodes and theories that we've done, I love them all, but the subject of MH370 was probably my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, it's aviation's biggest mystery ever. I mean, and it's the last plane to go missing, actually, even now in 2025. You know, if you look it up, you realize 2014. And the reason why I think it still lingers in people's minds is in 2014, we know that a plane the size of a Boeing 777 can't just disappear, but that's what we've been told. And even 10 years later, we still don't have any explanation that makes any sense. We don't have enough evidence.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is the most expensive search and intensive search that's ever been done in history. Am I right?
And we have the technology now to search the ocean floor as well. So they mapped huge swaths of the ocean floor on the 7th arc, where they claim that this plane must have gone down based on these Inmarsat satellite pings. And really what I would tell people, to get to the truth, we have to realize one thing. First is the United States government must know what happened to a Boeing 777 that was flying rogue for 8 hours, according to them, past our military exercises, our super sensitive military bases, such as Diego Garcia Military Base, past our over-the-horizon radars like Jorn has in Australia. And all these radars were supposedly like turned off that night, these critical defense radars. I mean, the excuses are just unbelievable. So I don't think people should be that surprised that when some military footage leaks on the internet of an operation of a plane that's been missing for 11 years, like, yes, it may seem incredible what we're seeing, but what I try to do is demystify kind of the technology, the science. And today what I'm hoping to help demystify too is like the special operations aspect of it. Like, what are our intelligence agencies like able to do, willing to do, and how are they able to, lie to us?
For those who aren't familiar with MH370, will you just give us a synopsis from beginning to disappearance?
Yeah, I think to really break it down, you start with Kuala Lumpur. That's where this flight was flying, Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, on March 7th, 2014. The flight was at 1630 UTC, didn't take off until about 1641 UTC, I believe was the time. And it's flying northeast to Beijing. This is important. Plane's flying to Beijing, and it's actually loaded up with 20 semiconductor engineers that are connected to a U.S. aerospace defense or U.S. defense company. So 40 minutes into the flight, it's over the South China Sea. It's outside of Malaysia and Thailand. Suddenly the plane goes dark. This is the first impactful moment event of the plane. Plane goes dark. Now, for several days, we just thought that's the plane crashed over the South China Sea. They were searching there. There was a guy on an oil rig claims he saw the plane on fire for a few brief seconds in the right direction. It wasn't until a couple days later that the Malaysian government came out and said, oh, the military actually was watching the plane on radar. Of course they are, because you can't make a plane go dark off of radar, military radar, not a civilian airliner. And they say, oh, the plane actually turned back around. It turned around when it went dark and started flying back towards, there's some argument whether or not it was flying back towards Langkawi or Penang, but basically flying back towards the nearest airport to go to land, slightly closer than going back to Kuala Lumpur, its originating point. So the plane is flying back. And then we find out much later that there was a cell phone pinged the cell tower over Penang, near Penang. So this would mean the plane must have been very low when it passes over Penang, about 20 minutes, 30 minutes after the plane goes dark and turns back around. Now, for whatever reason, the plane does not land. This is still one of the biggest mysteries for me in the investigation, which is why did the plane not land there? In an emergency event, if it was a fire or something like that, just land the plane, get it on the ground as fast as you can. But this now, the plane diverts again. So now it was flying to the west, but now it takes a northwesterly turn through the Straits of Malacca, over the ocean, to the Nicobar Islands. And this is where it's seen by another eyewitness, Catherine T. She is a very reliable witness. She definitely saw the plane. She sees a massive jumbo jet with a glowing kind of orange tinge around it, haze around it, with dark smoke coming out of the back of it, flying very low. So, not like even super high in the sky. Very unusual sighting in the middle of the night. And this is the final kind of point where she doesn't see it. She just kind of sees it disappear. She goes inside, comes out, plane's not there anymore. But this is the location where we now have videos within 100 miles where she was at, showing this plane disappearing in two military videos. The official story, or the story we're being told in the public at least, is that, oh, we picked up some satellite pings from this point here where we lost military radar contact with the plane. We got some satellite pings, and we're going to have independent people online, bloggers, we call them experts, I guess, these days. They're going to interpret these satellite pings and determine that this means the plane went south from the Nicobar Islands and flew for 5 hours until it got to the South Indian Ocean, and then it must have run out of fuel, and then it must have hit the ocean and sunk into the ocean. That's what we're being led to believe. The story that I present, or at least the story the videos present that have reemerged, is that point in the Nicobar Islands is where this operation was conducted on the plane, where we have two drones, one above it, one next to it, and that we see I think a weapon being deployed against the plane. And then subsequently we got a cover up because, much like probably if you want to compare it to something like TWA Flight 800 or something, some type of event where the United States can't admit that we were involved in the operation.
At what point, and where did the evidence come that this plane made contact with a U.S. naval vessel?
Yeah. So there was actually, it's only reported in the China Times, the day after the plane disappeared, a report that there was an intercepted communication between the U.S. Navy and the pilot of MH370 saying that the plane was disintegrating in attempting an emergency landing. And that report also has a time associated to it, 2:43 a.m., which is a wild time to pick because if you convert that into UTC time, assuming it's Malaysian time, it converts into 1843 UTC, which is exactly when that plane would have been in the Nicobar Islands where we're seeing it on these videos, like around the same time Catherine T was seeing it in the Nicobar Islands. And so if that's true, then that's a direct connection to the U.S. Navy being in contact with the plane. And to me, it explains why they wouldn't land at Penang as well. Why didn't they land that plane? That's something I still kind of struggle with. I imagine they got a communication. You get a communication on the radio says, go to these rendezvous coordinates. We're the U.S. military. We're going to, help you out. Or you can tell them anything at that point, I imagine. So that's kind of my speculation on why they went to that point, why they didn't end up trying to land the plane. But it may also just not have been safe. I've spoken to some pilots. I've spoken to FAA security director, Billy Vincent, about this like fire scenario, what a pilot would do. And yeah, you want to get the plane on the ground, but you're also overloaded with fuel. So you have a weight consideration. It's nighttime. The airport might not even be open. So, you also have to determine whether or not you have light. And if there was some sort of fire or let's say espionage or sabotage done to the plane and the plane literally had no power, which is what we think the situation was, there's no lights on the plane then if you have no power. So trying to land the plane with minimal or no lighting might also be extremely difficult. And the conventional view right now, which actually this was a very fringe theory previously, was that the pilot somehow pulled all this off, which to me is just incredible to try to imagine how a pilot can make a plane go dark, like entirely go dark to the point where no one can see anything about it. And the pilot, like everyone looked into him and there's no red flags at all. Like his coworkers loved him. He's a great guy. Like the stuff about his wife and him being a weird person was like all misinformation. Like his wife's always supported him. Florence DeChangi, who I know you said I'm the #1 investigator, but I'll give her the hat. She, did a huge amount of research initially into this. She got his medical records and found there's no mental issues or anything like that. And he was not an Islamic jihadist or anything like that either. That people were trying to paint him. So
in addition to that, it doesn't explain the smoke, right?
Doesn't explain really anything, honestly, about the situation at all. And that's where I would tell people, like, a lot of trying to figure out what happened to this missing plane is we have to push aside our biases and our preconceived notions and just look at things unbiased. And if we do that, then I think the truth really just shines to the surface, which, going back to the beginning, is there's no way the United States government doesn't know what happened to this airplane. Like, not in 2014, not with the surveillance capabilities that we have.
And not in 2025 now.
Not definitely not. No.
We have the ability to,
Recently, you've had even just Michael Kratsios, the White House technology and science advisor, saying that we have the ability to manipulate time and space in a prepared presentation that clearly would have been edited and what have you and reviewed. Yeah. You have President Trump now multiple times saying that we have weapons that nobody understands, that nobody's close to us in technology. I think we're finally now getting to a point where people can look at these videos and what's happening here and realize, like, oh, we might actually have super weapons that, we are hiding for national security that, we would, in theory, use on an operation if the situation was called for it.
So there's two videos. These videos, one was earlier believed to be from a satellite, another from a U.S. military drone. Now we know that the one wasn't from a satellite. They're both from U.S. military drones, correct?
Yeah, and so if we want to play the first video, this video is actually called Satellite Video Airliner and UFOs. It was the first one to leak on May 19th, 2014. So roughly 8 weeks after the plane disappeared, but it says in the description, received March 12th, 2014, which is only 4 days after the plane disappeared.
So we'll play the videos. If you're not watching and you're listening, I would encourage you to come back and watch, although we'll still try to walk you through it. So explain what we're seeing here.
Initially, we thought this was a satellite video because it looks like we're watching this airplane from really far away. The thing that was the major breakthrough was realizing this is wide area motion imagery, WAMI. So WAMI, wide area motion imagery, is actually made to look like satellite video. That's why it looks like satellite video. So what it is, though, is there's a drone, and this is called Gorgon Stare, the version that we're looking at here, Gorgon Stare Increment 2. There's an MQ-9 Reaper drone above the plane, much higher above the plane. This plane is flying very low. We can tell because of these clouds on the screen. These clouds are cumulus clouds. That's the ocean underneath as well. This is a very low flying plane, and this drone is probably around 20,000 feet above it. Okay. And it's got cameras underneath the wings of it, Gorgon Stare cameras looking down. And what these drones do is they fly around in a hexagon pattern, and then they take these photos all the time. And this is beaming to, and you see in the bottom left corner, it says NROL 22. It's kind of cut off in this version. It says NROL 22. It's beaming to that satellite, and then that satellite's relaying that information to ground-based computers where they take these photos and they convert it into what we're seeing here, which is wide area motion imagery. That's why you see this jerky motion. It's only 6 frames per second. The plane kind of looks like it's jerking a little bit because when they were putting this technology together, it was slow initially. And in fact, this is why we know this is iteration 2. The first iteration of Gorgon Stare, there was all these complaints about it around 2010 to 2012. It was the frame rate was too low. You couldn't track people. You couldn't do anything like that. What they did was they upgraded it with something called Argus. Argus cameras upgraded it into Increment 2. This was the last publicly available version, and it was announced around the exact same time these videos leaked. So this here is a drone filming above it, and we can even see the coordinates there. So what's happening here is that if you watch their Argus videos, you guys can see online if you Google Argus, It's a huge field of view. So this drone is actually mapping like about a 100 square kilometer area of the ocean. And someone can interact with it and they can press on the screen and it pulls up a window. We are looking at one of those windows. So somebody has popped open a window and they're watching the plane, tracking the plane on this huge battle map.
Of all the commercial aircraft, and
they could see anything in that 100 square kilometer view. And so then here they can just zoom in on it and they can replay this. This isn't just live. It's pre-recorded. They can rewind if they want to. That's why you see this mouse cursor come on the screen. And notice at the end there, when the mouse cursor goes off the screen, what they're doing is they're taking this window they have on their screen and they're just going and they're closing the window. And it's still recording for a brief second there.
So tell us what happens when we see, we're seeing a energy orb come in, right?
So I would call these hypersonic plasma orbs.
And there's one comes in.
Because this is essentially, they've created a drone here. They've taken the hypersonic turbojet engines and they've turned it into a heat exchange.
And there's 3.
Yeah, and the orbs lock in and they're using magnetism to lock in like this. So why can they create a perfect triangle like that? Because it's magnet inversion, positive and minus magnetic or electromagnetic charge, and it creates an equilibrium, and they're just locking into a certain equilibrium. So how would you pull something like this off? Well, you would use some kind of fly-by-wire advanced, almost AI computer-based system for flight navigation. And then they spin around the plane, and then they go into this vertical orientation. Why did they flip to this vertical orientation? There's actually a lot of clues to be gained there from a scientific perspective. Like why, if you're spinning around the plane, you got 3 orbs spinning around the plane, why would you choose a specific way to spin around them? Because you can spin in 360 degrees. It doesn't matter. You can spin however you want. They're doing that because they're telling us where this plane is going. If this was just a missile, like a lot of people say, they think this is an annihilation event. If this is annihilation, I would just shoot a missile at the thing and it's gonna blow up. Why this whole, like, look at this dance and watch when this first orb locks into the plane. When the first orb locks into the plane, it almost like it doesn't lock in right away. There's like one orb spin around the plane, but the other 2 orbs, as they lock in, they know exactly where they're going. They're locking in directly into their triangle formation. That tells me that this is like some kind of homing weapon where like, okay, you're painting the target, you've got the first orb locked in, and now they're all locked in, and now they're doing their program, their dance to spin around the plane. And it must be I think, a teleportation protocol. Like now that the orbs are in this vertical formation, spinning around the plane, they're spinning counterclockwise around the plane. The plane just disappears. Now this was the thing.
Flash. What's the flash?
And the flash, there's a flash of light, but that's actually not visible light, as we will find out when we watch the second video. But there's this flash of light. It turns out if you research wormholes, teleportation type stuff, you find that you expect there to be this flash of X-ray or soft X-ray or ultraviolet light. And those forms of light are not visible to the human eye. Now, this is going to be one of the hugest clues in the second video that what we're looking at is a real wormhole, real scientifically accurate one. Because we're going to look at a second video in a minute. And in the second video, we're going to see that flash is black. Means it's outside the thermal range of this color. And that would mean
it's not an explosion at all.
So yeah, it's not. It's more of like an implosion, right? It's an endothermic event. It's not a release of energy that we're seeing there, though we are seeing this release of this flash of photons. And that flash is actually probably the best evidence that that's a real video in 3 dimensions, because when that flash goes off, people have taken like you could change like the color scale on it. You can see it accurately illuminates the clouds. Like on the left side, you can see the clouds are accurately illuminated as if it's 3-dimensional lighting. And then in the foreground, you can see it only illuminates the part that would be, the light would be hitting. And that kind of level of detail is not something you see in, a standard hoax video or something like that. That means someone needed to create a 3-dimensional environment with point source 3D lighting to have accurate light, not just a glow effect or something like that either. From a physics standpoint, that says what we're looking at here is a real wormhole. Now, for me, what I try to conceptualize to people is like, what would that mean? Well, when we look at the video, the clouds don't get blown away like we would expect from a nuke. We don't see the clouds get blown away, and we don't see them get sucked in like a black hole or something like that either. So it's more of just like a mirror. Like if you were to go through a mirror and now you're just on a completely different area of space-time or, on our planet somewhere else. So it's almost just like taking a cutout, like you're in Microsoft Paint and you just cut something out and you stitch it and you move it somewhere else. which is very unnatural to us.
Because the orbs disappear as well.
Yeah, the
which is
orbs
interesting,
disappear as
right?
well.
The orbs, they didn't create a portal and then the plane goes through it. The orbs are gone as well.
Yeah, so the papers that I would tell people to read, first of all, Eric Davis, teleportation physics study, guy's literally a UFO whistleblower talking to Anna Polina Luna and Tim Burchett and all these other people. And I'm going, people need to ask him about teleportation because I think I'm seeing it here on 2 videos and he probably helped them make it. But the other papers people need to look into are the DIRDs, the Defense Intelligence Reference Documents that Hal Puthoff, Eric Davis's boss, got commissioned. And one of them is about non-locality.
No.
Which is
Eric Davis's boss is
Hal Puthoff.
and he's passed.
No, he's still around.
He's still around.
He's still around. Yeah, he's getting up there in age, and people should try to get him to testify before.
Okay, yeah,
that happens.
I didn't think, for some reason I thought he wasn't still alive. Okay,
No, but a lot of these guys have been passing, and I think that they are kind of waiting the clock out basically for some of this stuff and technology. When it comes to the teleportation, and some of those DIRDs, one is called traversable wormholes, stargates, and negative energy, and the other one's warp drives, dark energy, and the manipulation of extra dimensions.
and these are government documents.
Government papers.
Yeah,
they were
this-
some of
this
the most
isn't like
popular.
some-
Yeah.
hobbyist putting papers. This is government documents.
And if you look these guys up, which I have, like every one of the authors, these are serious business, all black project engineers, all of them. One of them, Friedwart Winterberg, one of my spirit animal, he has passed, but he was major in inertial confinement, fusion, and thermonuclear weapons, Project Paperclip scientist that we got from Germany. Like, these were as legit people as you can possibly be. John Kramer, out of, I believe, University of Washington, is one that wrote the non-locality paper. We would think of that as the double slit experiment or quantum entanglement. And he knows every EPR experiment there is, all these experiments where we're trying to figure out why can we quantum entangle 2 things? And why, when we change this one over here, does this one also interact? How can that be possible? This is connected to the idea of teleportation. And John Kramer, he presents 2 theories about teleportation that I think are very important for people to understand. One is, everybody asks, does that plane go back in time? Does that plane go another dimension? Well, the old school physicists, Richard Feynman, the Manhattan Project, John Archibald Wheeler, these guys all thought we're not going to be able to have retrocausality. We're not going to be able to go back in time. Somehow nature will prevent it from happening. Whether you believe that or you don't, we're not going to know until we see the experiment. But I happen to agree with those guys. And the important part is, in his paper, he says, you know what, to get around this question and this problem, we can actually make our experiment. We can actually engineer the EPR experiment so that there is no retrocausality. So what that would mean is,
What do you mean when you say there is no retrocausality?
it would mean we're going to make a teleportation experiment, but it can never go back in time. The fastest it can go is instant transmission. Like, I can teleport from here to over there, but I'm never going to teleport to over there in the past. There's never going to be 2 of me at the same exact moment. So that's what he says. And he says, we can actually configure our teleportation apparatus. And then the other part of this then is that he presents this idea, well, you need to have, I explain to people like a warp gate. You have to have an end point and you have to have a receiving point and a starting point. So this would mean that you're not just teleporting like, okay, I'm just teleporting this direction. You have to have like some anchor that tells you this is where you're actually ending up to. Because especially if you drop out of space-time, if you want to think of it like that, you're no longer anchored to a point in time anymore either. So this is where things temporally start to get weird, and why I think you hear some of the Congress people talking about interdimensional stuff is like, this is what they're talking about. There is an extra dimension and it allows for teleportation, you to blip out over here and you to reappear over here. That's quantum entanglement. But there may be limitations to it. There may be physical mechanisms like we can't go back in time. That might be a possibility. Or if we can, that may imply that there are multiple universes, maybe infinite dimensions from that perspective. So I think people should read that paper because it also connects to this idea of quantum communications, faster than light communication. And he says, and it presents in that paper, that you could configure one of these experiments like a switch, where you send somebody basically Morse code. Either the interference pattern is on or it's off. And you can send that to somebody like on Mars. And what you could do with this technology, just to give people context of what we can do with the same thing that we saw in those videos, you could control the Curiosity rover on Mars from Earth in real time with no lag. And people say, no, that's not possible. It's super far away, like the speed of light. Like, it will take 8 minutes to send a command. That's what this can do. Like, and that would be, we're not violating time. We're not violating causality when we do that. As long as it's instantaneous transmission and not back in time transmission, it works. But that's where, from a perspective of what those videos represent in terms of wormholes or in that kind of technology, this is the stakes.
What we're seeing here is the start point.
Yeah.
We're seeing a start point and not we don't know where it goes, when it goes. I mean,
the only way we can know 100% sure is if we see the videos on the other side. Because, I mean, if you're recording 2 videos of this operation on this side, presumably you know the other side and you're recording it there too.
Right. We just haven't seen those.
And this is where they call me Ashton Forbes, because it was my buddy Dave Rossi, who's a defense contractor himself, a third-party one. He presented this idea of what if there's another orb somewhere else? And to your point of like, well, the 3 orbs also disappear with the plane. That's an important clue. Because why are they disappearing? Well, if you just think of it from just a pure electromagnetic perspective, just a simple perspective, imagine each one of those orbs is 1 positive charge. Okay, well, we have 3 total positive charge over here. Well, where's that plane going to go when it disappears out of space-time? I imagine wherever there's 3 negative charge, anywhere, right? I put my 3 negative charge, my opposite charge of my orbs over here, and then they're going to attract together because that's what positive and negative do. So I imagine that's the basis for the, how do you decide where it shows up? And then some people are arguing, well, maybe there's 3 orbs on the other side. Maybe they're doing like an opposite dance, like this, and we just don't see the other side. So if it ends up being true and we can, force the government to admit the truth on these videos, I would love to force them to show us the other side, because when and where that plane shows up answers a lot of those questions about, how does this stuff end up really working?
And what are we about to look at here? What's the second video before we play it?
So, and this is the reason why I started getting really compelled with this, is that I had actually seen the second video back in 2014, which is a color FLIR. We've identified it not 100%, but pretty high degree of certainty to be a Northrop Grumman Lightning G4 FLIR camera, which is usually made for an F-16 as a targeting pod, basically, but it's underneath hardpoint number 5 of an MQ-9 Reaper, which is pretty unusual if you ask me. I tell people it almost feels like, I don't know your opinion, but feels like putting like a rocket launcher on a donkey. Like,
and the question really to me is what is this first drone? Why is it zoomed in? Why did somebody select and zoom in on this commercial aircraft? At the same time, why would a Predator drone be tracking any aircraft, but especially this one?
Yeah, that's the first question people always ask, and especially when the videos reemerge. So we saw the first video was, the first video is the one we already had just watched. And now the second video shows up. When people start to see there's 2 videos and start to immediately kind of connect that they look like they're in perfect sync, just from an eye perspective. But
they've been highly evaluated to be in sync.
Now at this point, we know they are definitely in perfect sync with one another. But at that point, people are just eyeballing it. And, you see these 2 videos are in perfect synchronization. And now we have another one from a horizontal angle. The first one looked like it was from a satellite. It was even called satellite video. So it even probably fooled the person who was leaking it on the internet. The second video, now we're looking at it horizontally, and we're looking at this camera. We can tell there's a human operating the camera. It's not an AI. We can see the person struggling to keep the plane in view. And this is the part where, I think this is the first wall that has to fall down for most people, because they say, why are they recording? There's only one answer for why they're recording. I mean, can you think of any other ones? There's only one in my mind. It has to be an operation. Yeah. That's the only reason. And when I found out that the satellite video was actually Sierra Nevada Corporation's wide area motion imagery Gorgon stare capabilities. That's where I went, okay, it's definitely an operation. It was definitely all pre-planned.
Why? What makes you say that? Because of who it was?
I think just because of the fact that this drone is over the ocean in the middle of nowhere, and like these wide area motion images for like capturing like cities and like tracking all the objects in the cities.
What's it doing over an ocean?
You're going like, yeah, what is this drone doing over the ocean? And it would have had to already have been there. Like, it's not going to intercept it and then start recording. Like, it would have been up there recording, and they would have had it in that location because they want to watch the plane coming into view and like the whole operation go down.
And that's where the theory is that the U.S. naval vessel called it to a rendezvous point.
Exactly, because they wanted it to be in that exact spot where the drone is already up overhead, already recording on this wide field view. And you look at that perspective, and this is where I also throw out aliens too. Like, okay, maybe there's a 1 in a million chance that they're recording this plane like maybe on fire, and now all of a sudden some orbs come out of nowhere and zap the plane. I mean, if that was the case, I don't think it would have played out the way it's played out so far. I think they would, first of all, just tell the truth. Like, why not? Why lie about that? Like, oh, some orbs zapped the plane while we were secretly recording it.
They just so happen to have 20 semiconductor engineers on it that
are going to China.
Going to China, yeah. That was part of a U.S. government program.
Yeah, it's like, so you look at that and you go, no, it's got to be an operation. That's why they're recording over the middle of the ocean right there. We have it narrowed down now to 100 square kilometer range because of the capabilities of the whammy at the known time. And so that's the first kind of thing that people have to realize, is that it has to be an operation. And then once you contextualize it as an operation, everything actually starts to fall into place, including, surprisingly, the technology as well. But I called up Sierra Nevada Corporation, tried to get their lawyers on the phone, say, I want a public statement because like this is your software. And I learned that they're not just like the camera makers. They're the integrators of the software. So these cameras are recording it. They're beaming it to satellites. It's got to go to some computers somewhere, presumably Sierra Nevada's computers, maybe the military's, not sure. But, these people have to, at a minimum, know that we're looking at their software on this. And if they're saying silent about it, to me, you're implicit in the cover up.
Did they just not reply?
So they kind of, they didn't reply. I tried to leave voicemails. And then I started calling. This is only like the third time I tried calling. They started hanging up on me. So this is a true story, guys, by the way. So then I made a post about how they're hanging up on me. So everybody started calling them. And it shut down their whole phone service. Like the whole phone service was completely shut down. People started messaging me saying they could shut down everything. And then they deleted their whole website about Gorgon stare and wide area motion imagery. They deleted it so fast that the URLs were still there and the hyperlinks, but the page was just 404. Now it's gone. So I just think they're like, guys, I mean, if they weren't guilty, I mean, why are they acting like that?
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, and then what I did as well after that, because, I'm doing pretty legit journalism, I would say, first thing I did when I realized it was Gorgon stare was I started looking through my old posts and replies. Like, people were probably telling me this was Gorgon stare that were in the know. So I found 2 different people that were saying like, that's Gorgon stare, that's Gorgon stare. And one of them was like, yep, I worked at China Lake. This is Big Safari. This is like where they test the drones. He's like, I've seen pretty much every version of Gorgon stare, and that's definitely Gorgon stare. They even sent me a photo of themselves next to a Reaper drone. As another source as well, I was going back through some of my photos from some of my early conversations, because sometimes I would save pictures of some conversations that I thought were significant with people. One person was saying, like, I spoke to my friends in the Air Force and they say that you're looking at drone footage. It's older model. And at the time I didn't know what that meant. And then now when I figured out it was whammy, I went, oh, that's what they meant. Because I was thinking it was satellite at the time. They were trying to tell me that that's a drone from above, and that's an older version of the Gorgon stare capability.
So this one's from the Predator.
Yeah.
And it's tracking it kind of an even plane horizontally, right?
So it's tracking it on an even plane, and the operator is zooming in. There's you can actually tell there's a lag when the operator is zooming in, which is probably means that they're like in the United States somewhere, and this is, they're doing this like halfway across the world, essentially. I do wonder, who would be the operator who's controlling that camera while they're zooming in, all that? Like, that must be one of the most sensitive positions out there. You're watching these magic plasma orbs zap a plane away. And what's wild is they zoom in on the plane, and you can tell that they must be seeing it on a second camera because the plane's out of view, and then all of a sudden it comes into view and it's zoomed in. So clearly they're either cropped or something, and they're seeing more than what we were seeing. But then right before this zap happens, the orbs are spinning around the plane just like in the first video, but we see a little bit more detail in the drone video. We can see the orbs actually converge on the plane in the last seconds. Like right before this zap happens, we see the zap is actually black in the thermal, which indicates it's non-thermal. It's not releasing heat, because otherwise it should be like white hot, red or something, but it's all black. And the camera operator like just zooms out like casually, like after the plane's just not there anymore. Like for me, if that was somebody who was like seeing that for the first time, if that was alien orbs that came out of nowhere, that I feel like the camera operator should have been looking around, wondering like what just happened, like freaking out. But if them, it was
he's seen this before.
Yeah, he's seen this. It wasn't his first rodeo with some plasma orbs.
Let's play it.
And this one is more important than the first video just because of all the details that it shows in this. This color FLIR. People didn't even know we had color FLIR capability. You can just clearly see the nose of the Reaper drone as well. The orbs themselves, it's fun to see how they lock in. I mean, it's not fun because of what happened to 239 people, but the technology is amazing. The color of the orb is super important. It changes from like all green to becoming blue and green or a little bit of yellow. And that's because these things are little fusion reactors. They're little compact fusion reactors covered in a ball of plasma, and it's just a magnetic field that's confining the plasma. And we see these dark lines in front of the orbs. This is also another indicator that this is a little ball of plasma that's a fusion reactor. These lines in front and behind the orbs, this is consistent with a field reverse configuration in fusion. Field reverse configuration in fusion has two axial jets that shoot out of either end. So essentially what they've done here is they've turned some of these old scramjet engine designs into a heat exchange where there's a fusion reaction happening in the middle of those plasma orbs. And they create a plasma bubble around them through the extremely powerful magnetic fields that they have. And the big problem in fusion is confining all the plasma. Like they can't keep it all perfectly confined. But what they found is, okay, well, don't try to keep it all perfectly confined. Like let it shoot out in a jet. And you can control that jet for propulsion. And if this sounds crazy, well, I thought it was crazy too until I started reading the DIRDs, the Defense Intelligence Reference Documents, those papers I was talking about, the ones that are the Pentagon secret papers. In those papers, they talk about negative mass propulsion, but also aneutronic fusion propulsion. Aneutronic fusion propulsion. And I went, I think that's what we're seeing here. And now I'm almost certain that's what we're seeing. Aneutronic fusion propulsion and also air-breathing magnetohydrodynamics, which basically means you can ionize the air itself, turn the air into a plasma, like extracting like the hydrogen basically out of it, turn that into a plasma and use that as your fuel. Use that as your fuel source in a fusion reactor. And what that means is now you don't need these big rocket tanks to hold all your fuel anymore because you use the air itself as the fuel. And that's what they've done here. And so this would imply that this, that's not alien technology, but it's just technology so far beyond where we're currently thinking right now, where we think fusion is another 20, 30 years away. Meanwhile, you've got the Air Force or Lockheed Martin. Those are the people that I've kind of tagged as the people who would have built these. They've got three-dimensional stabilization. They've got, fly-by-wire AI navigation here at this point. We've got fusion to the point where we've got magnetic field strengths that can perfectly confine our plasma. And then we've also potentially got right there some type of gravitational weapon. Like that's what I would call that. When you see something zip out like it's going through a mirror, that's essentially like dropping through our plane of reality to this extra dimension. And now you're just popping up somewhere else. Like just like folding your paper in half, right? You fold the paper in half. Yeah. And that's how all the wormholes are essentially explained. Now, two last things I'll point out. The orbs, why are they spinning around the plane? The way they spin around the plane determines if it's going to go backwards or forwards. And also they spin because a spinning wormhole reduces the negative energy requirement. So this is one of the scientific papers basically says a spinning wormhole reduces it. And also the shape, the triangle shape reduces it. It's a polyhedral wormhole. So you could imagine connecting just like connecting the dots. You create this shape, and what this does is because all you're doing is moving this flat face, this cutout, that minimizes the energy requirement as well for your wormhole. So whoever developed that, this isn't their first try at doing this. Like they've been experimenting and perfecting it, figuring out, you know, exactly what the minimum energy requirement is to pull that off. And I think it's personally connected to nukes. I think that they, when I read Frywart Winterbrook's textbook on nukes, finds out one of the configurations for these nukes is a polyhedral configuration, just triangle configuration, just like what we see in that video, which even made me wonder, going back to the batteries and the fire scenario, is what if that's some type of catalyst for what we saw in that event? And it turns out lithium 6, lithium 7 is one of the few aneutronic fusion fuels. Like helium 3, that's another one of the ones that could be used. The stuff that we're trying to mine on the moon, I think it was Lieutenant General Quast, I believe, has been talking about that a lot. And then the other one's boron 11. So those are what I've been primarily investigating related to fusion on, you know, kind of coming from the discoveries related to that video.
On this video, there's a couple of things I want to point out.
Yeah.
One, can we pull it back up? I want to show where we actually see that this is a U.S. military drone.
Yeah, in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the beginning and at the end again. I think it zooms back out at the end and you can see the drone. But that's, you know, I think that when somebody was leaking this, they must have been like, okay, you're looking at the nose of the drone. You can see the heat signature. Yeah, so right in the beginning of this, you can see the nose of the drone. In fact, I'm surprised that people can't tell just from this that this is real. I mean, you can even see the thermal temperature change between the wing and the air, as well as around the nose of the drone. You can even see that heat signature right there. That's actually the drone opens up right there, and you've got the computer. I think it's the navigation stuff in there, but it's a little computer right in that spot as well. So right off the bat here, you can tell that this is, we actually weren't sure if it was an MQ-9 or an MQ-1C, but I think now we've settled on MQ-9. It's got a slightly longer wingspan, and this would be hard point number 5. So people also wonder, like, why can you see the wing? Well, if you look at these Northrop Lightning Pod cameras, they've got kind of like an angled kind of camera set up in the front of them as well. So depending on what way the camera is kind of facing, like you can potentially see that bit of the wing underneath there. But yeah, this is the part where also when the drone goes underneath the plane, the wake of the plane, it actually shakes accurately as well. And when they zoom in, there's actually accurate shake as well. Like the shake increases, just like if I were to zoom in here, like on you, you're gonna see that shaky, shake more as well. Which these are details that you're never gonna see that if like somebody's hoax, like a cheap hoax, like those deals.
Let's talk about that real quick. So I asked the question, you know, are these videos real? It's a fair question, I think, for anybody to ask. And then you look on the internet, if anybody goes and Googles this, you're going to see a lot of people saying these videos are hoax. So I wanted to know, like, especially for shadow figures, right? I wanted to know. So we talked to Professor Holland over in London, and he's been, you know, decades in the film industry with all the tech, discovery, and you know, he's worked everywhere. Yeah. And is very, very credible. And he spent time examining these videos, and he really breaks down in the Shadow Figures episode, breaks down why these are not doctored videos, they're not a hoax, the authenticity of the videos. And he gets really into detail. It would have been impossible to fake these videos. Yeah,
I mean, the way to look at it is it would require like a major studio, a major project. This wouldn't have been something some little, you know, it's not some kid on the internet is going to go and, oh, okay, I'm just going to put this together. And this is the thing where you'll see a lot of these people, because if you Google it or even Google me, you're going to see people saying all kinds of things about me, negative things, saying these videos are fake, what have you. Look, everybody's got opinions, you know, just to contextualize it for people. There's actually this drama going on the internet right now where, you know, people are cheating in video games and what have you. And there's even in situations where people are obviously cheating, there's always still people that are defending them and what have you, right? Like you're never going to get people to agree on anything, especially when it's something this controversial. Like, you know, we're talking about a major conspiracy. We're talking about technology beyond people's comprehension. And in order for this to even exist and that to be possible, there must be like a very deep, dark kind of control mechanism happening to us. A lot of people are not ready for that.
Well, also, I mean, let's see, you know, the videos are real and it's put out and exposes the government. Well, the government, you know, our government is brilliant at the propaganda to, you know, to make things look like they're not real, right? So they would certainly send out some, you know, some misinformation to mislead people. I believe after talking to Professor, you know, from you, but, you know, I like want to talk to a video person. I told our team at at Ironclad. I'm like, hey, I want to talk to somebody that's expert in videos. And we talked to him, and he convinced me that these videos are real.
Yeah, if you talk to people who are like actual experts, not just internet experts, but people who are actually experts who've worked in the industries, they will tell you that what you're looking at here is extremely complex to pull off. I think Professor Simon points out a few things about how the orbs spin around the plane. Like when people do fake stuff, that's really hard to get to look accurate. The orbs actually go and they wash through the back of the smoke of the plane.
The smoke swirls.
You can see the disruption correctly. Yeah, and when it goes through the smoke, there's in the other the whammy. If you change the color channel, you can actually watch one of the orbs displace the smoke going behind the plane as well.
And you have a video of a video, right?
Yeah. And we've got 2 videos and they're both in perfect synchronization. So from a forensic standpoint, the videos hold up very well.
Yeah.
A lot of the debunks are based on, I found this thing that looks like this, and so I'm just going to say that somebody modified it to make it to do that, right? And that's just a lot of people are just trying to, cope with something that's really hard for them to accept. Now, there is one debunk that I do want to bring up, because you said if this is real, then the government would do stuff to cover things up or to hide it and what have you. And they do, and they did. Yeah. They did. One I'm sure about, which is that second video is Gorgon stare wide area motion imagery. Now, if anyone disagrees, I challenge you, go talk to somebody in the Air Force who's seen Gorgon stare wide area motion imagery and have them look at that and then tell me that's not wide area motion imagery. I challenge anybody out there. That would be my first point on that. But also what that means, somebody did find cloud photos on the internet where it's not like you just stretch it like 30% and it's the same clouds we saw in that wide area motion imagery video. That to me can't be a coincidence. And so people have tried to say that, somebody bought these stock photos of clouds and they somehow turned them into these 2 videos. They don't explain how, they just say they did somehow. Turned them into these 2 videos with these stock photos of clouds. No, what really happened was somebody planted the Gorgon stare wide area motion imagery photos, maybe manipulated them, planted them, made them look like they were part. They didn't really do a great job, but like put them and said, these are part of some other person's photos and these were out here for a while. And yeah, that must be what somebody did. And that's pretty nefarious because it's indirect. It's one of those things where you put it out there and then you just tell people that are skeptic debunker people, hey, go look over here. And then they go find out and they run with the story that, that must be what happened.
And that's how misinformation works. And
that's how it works. And so that's what they did. And when people admit finally these videos are real, I want people to understand that that's the kind of thing that they're willing to do. They're willing to go plant this. And the proof was people were saying, these photos come from 2012. That proves these videos must be fake because these videos are from 2014. But once we actually did forensic analysis, actually looked at those photos on the website, no, they weren't uploaded until October 25th, 2014. 6 months after these videos were already on the internet.
Yeah.
And again, this is just facts versus opinions. And when I present that fact, they hate that. They go, no, there was a site migration. There's no evidence of any site migrations. There's no evidence of any of that. Those photos, the first time when they were uploaded was after these were already on the internet. And you have to ask yourself for something like that, for a debunk like that, where you say, somebody found this photo on the internet. Okay, show me anywhere on the internet that it predates these videos. Show me that photo on the internet before that. Because if I'm right or if I'm wrong, that's all you have to do and you prove me wrong, right? And they can't do that because these videos are definitely real. The other thing I want to point out, there's I think one more thing that really susses me out that I think they covered up related to this, and it comes from Florence Echangi's book. There's a piece of debris that washes shore in Thailand. There's actually 2 pieces. One that nobody really saw. It was covered up right away. But another piece, it's this huge, bendy kind of, I think it's the outer casing or inner casing on a Boeing 777 engine. Massive piece, like 6 feet long, something like that. It had 2 serial numbers on it, one on a bolt, and then another serial number kind of like just on the side of it. And it was just ignored and dismissed as like an engine or a rocket piece from a Mitsubishi rocket. Japan is thousands of miles away from Thailand.
Yeah.
And it's got English writing on, not Japanese writing, English writing on it. And why this would be significant is if there was like a fire event type of situation on this, a piece of the plane could have fallen off early on and it would have washed ashore in Thailand. But that would prove a story that would be completely different than the story they were trying to present. And what was most odd, and Florence points this out in her book, she says that the guy that posted on Twitter about this Mitsubishi rocket, like they basically just take this photo and it's like, look, these bolts are in the same spot on this thing that washes ashore in Thailand. This must be from a Mitsubishi rocket. Here's a stock photo of a Mitsubishi rocket. It makes me wonder if they don't just like Photoshop stuff and then put fake photos and stuff on the internet to debunk stuff like that, because the story of the rocket makes no sense. And so just to like add a little bit more weight, she went and called up Mitsubishi. She was like, hey, are you guys missing any pieces of your rockets? And not only to say they're not missing any, but they have a 100% retention rate on all their rocket, fuselages and what have you. So those are just a couple examples of like real stuff people might do to, cover things up in a way that's kind of indirect.
Before we get into the exit of the teleportation, as this zap appears, you showed me previously a image of the tail end of the plane looks like it's going into the void.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So because the orbs are spinning counterclockwise around the plane, we can use the right-hand rule in electrical engineering, which is just the electric and magnetic fields are perpendicular to each other. And the vector of force of travel is also perpendicular to both of those. So what this would mean is that depending on the direction the orbs are spinning around the plane, that could tell us which way this plane is going. And if we do that, it says the plane's going backwards. So one of the first things sleuths did was they compared the frame as the orbs are converging on the plane to the frame when the first portal opens up, and you can see the tail of the plane sticking out. In fact, I think it's a reflection of the plane. When actually you create a negative refractive index, if there's a refractive index change in a medium, you'll see total internal reflection. And that's what I think we're seeing happen, because it almost looks like a shadow of the tail of the plane. And if you just kind of pull the plane back a little bit, you realize it looks like it perfectly fits in there. So it almost looks like the plane's getting sucked backwards into this portal, not that far, but you can tell from the images. So that would imply that perhaps we know where this plane is going. And from the whammy, we have coordinates. So when we map those coordinates out in the whammy, we can tell the plane's going to the east, because we can just map the coordinates on the Earth. And so that would mean if it's going backwards, it's going back to the west. So now people that are skeptic that are watching this right now are probably going, but what about the debris they found? They found some debris in Africa, like 20 pieces of debris were found in Africa. That means that the plane crashed. That means the government doesn't lie to us. That means what? And I say, have you looked at a map? Africa is several thousand miles away from the South Indian Ocean where we are searching. There's no way the debris could have washed there. Now, people that try to say, but they did some models, those were all bullshit. I actually just looked at the actual math of when they did real tests, because they did real tests. They threw debris in the water. Nothing drifted more than 2 kilometers over a 24-hour period. In order to go from the South Indian Ocean search area to like South Africa, for example, where a piece of Rolls-Royce engine cowling with a big RR on it was found, no question, connected to the plane, that would take 7 kilometers per day that debris would have to drift for 500 days straight. For 500 days straight, it would have to go in one direction over that way. Oh, and by the way, the ocean currents don't go that way. The ocean currents go the other direction. So there's no way it can. And even if you believe that, okay, magically, went around Australia and then, somehow drifted all the way back to Africa, still, the bulk of the debris should have been found on the west coast of Australia. And we never found even one piece, not one piece. But go back to the videos now. Plane looks like it's being sucked backwards while it's flying to the east in the Nicobar Islands, very close to the last military radar contact. Well, if that's the case and it's going to the west, what's the west of the Nicobar Islands? Oh, Maldives are. The Indian Ocean is west of there. Diego Garcia Military Base is west of there. That was when I started investigating the conspiracy theories around this plane. Everybody was saying it went to Diego Garcia. They were just saying it got remote controlled there.
How far is Diego Garcia from the point of last point that it was seen?
It's like, I think 1,500 miles. I'm just kind of going off the top of my head. I haven't really done it, but it's basically, it would take almost the whole fuel of the plane to get from where it disappeared to Diego Garcia. So similar in terms of like how far it would get from where, from the fuel that they'd had on the plane. And some people speculated that those pings that they were like using to say the plane went south in the ocean, people did their own analysis independent and said that, no, this doesn't mean the plane went south. This means the plane went to Diego Garcia. And they were doing that connection as well. So there were people already speculating that. Now, what I speculate is that the plane reappears either at Diego Garcia or, based on other eyewitness sightings, somewhere in the Maldives.
So we have video of the entry of the teleportation, the portal, right? We don't have video of an exit, but we have eyewitness sightings of a plane in the area of Diego Garcia, but that's smoking still.
And credible ones, really credible.
And not in the time period of that it would travel 1,500 miles instantaneously.
Yeah, that's the part that's weird. So that's the part where it's like,
not weird if it was teleported.
Yeah, but if it's teleported, like anything's possible, right? And so it's like even going to the future is possible with teleportation. So you could have a scenario where plane disappears over here, and then several hours go by and it reappears over here. That's also possible. And then from the perspective of the people on the plane, it wouldn't appear like several hours went by. But from the outside perspective, it would feel like that. So even that's possible. So that's where it's really difficult. So I just like to say, here's the evidence. You tell me what story makes the most sense to you. And what the evidence says that early morning hours in the Maldives on this small island, 15 to 20 people see a jumbo jet with the red and white stripe of Malaysian Airlines with steam coming out of the back of it. Like 3 different investigators went and interviewed these people. They're all extremely credible. They have no reason to lie. They don't see jumbo jets, on the small island, and they see it flying south.
1,500 miles away.
Yeah, from like the last, point. So like,
and to explain what Diego Garcia Military Base is, because that's an important factor.
Yeah, Diego Garcia Military is one of the most secretive military bases that the United States government has in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It's no civilian airliners are not allowed to go there. In fact, no civilians are allowed to go there. There was some refugees that washed ashore there a few years back during COVID, I think is when that happened. And they were kept prisoner for 3 years. I don't even know if they've actually been released yet. But it was a humanitarian thing because they wash ashore there and they're just not allowed to ever leave. And humanitarian aid wasn't allowed to come and check on them or anything either because it's a special base. Recently, I think we just gave, or the UK just gave the Diego Garcia base or the area, the region, back to Mauritius. But we're going to maintain the military base, I think, for another 100 years or something like that. We're not giving that base away. No way. A lot of people were even speculating that Diego Garcia might be like Area 51. I mean, it's a good place to test stuff as well. There was a comedian, Dick Gregory, he's passed, but he had speculated that that's where the plane went and that the evil stuff was happening on Diego Garcia. He had also speculated that the engineers were related to the disappearance of the plane. But the theory that there was these 4 people in the patents that reverted to the Rothschilds, that ended up actually not being true. None of those people were on the plane. We triple, quadruple checked. And that's not how the patents work either. But the company was actually even more suspicious. It turns out they were like $7 billion in debt. And their owners, the equity holders, were some pretty interesting companies. I think BlackRock Group was one of them. So when the company got bought out the next year, all those equity holders, they would have lost a bunch of money. All of a sudden, they made out just fine. And the technology that company was working on was, advanced microchips. One of the things that you find when you really start to dig into advanced technology right away is when it comes to energy sources, what people are really doing now is they're doing microchips. Like Sonny White, who was on Joe Rogan recently, Garrett Modell, even Paul Thibodeau, he started making waves in the scientific community a few years ago. These guys are all working on like nanoscale devices that manipulate the quantum vacuum in a way to produce energy asymmetrically, basically free energy from a little microchip. And we're looking at a future in the next few years where those microchips are going to be in our phones, and our phones aren't going to run out of energy anymore. Like we're never going to have to be plugged in again. People aren't going to understand how that's even possible. But that's an example of the reason why these engineers on this plane would have been so high value.
Right.
Yeah.
What was there any, because the passengers have cell phones, pilots have cell phones. Yeah. Was there any cell phone pinging over in the area of Diego Garcia?
There was a photo that appeared, and it's weird because one of the main debunker people that's came out really hard against the videos also debunked this photo. A photo, I believe it was on March 19th, so about like 10 days after the plane disappeared. This photo appears on 4chan, of all places, and I think it's just called Help. And it says, "My name is Philip Wood. I'm being held prisoner by some military people. I don't know where I am. I had a black bag over my head. I stuck my phone in my butt and I hid it in my butt. And it's just he takes a black photo and it's just a black photo." So first reply is like, Philip Wood was the guy, he was on MH370.
And this is sent from his cell phone.
Supposedly. And of course we had no way to verify any of this. I mean, how could we? So the next reply is they're looking at the metadata of the black photo. and there's coordinates in it. Coordinates are Diego Garcia Military Base. And Diego Garcia Military Base had been admitted to be a black site. So there's some kind of prisons there. Plus, we know they're holding like 20 refugees or 30 refugees.
Did he say he was a passenger in a flight, or?
I don't think he said he was a passenger in the flight in the comment. I can't remember off the top of my head because I think the first reply was saying that he was a passenger on board the missing airliner.
Okay.
And he said maybe he had been drugged and he didn't. He was like, his memory was kind of messed up. And so a lot of people obviously say like, why would you post on 4chan? You know, maybe he only had internet. Maybe he didn't have phone service, or maybe it wasn't even his phone. I don't really know all the answers to that. What I do know is that people tried to debunk it, saying that the photo was like inconsistent, you know, with iPhone 5. And this is one of those things where when people do debunks, I don't find it to be very credible because they don't look at all the possibilities. And so I found an alternative counter debunk where somebody had done forensic analysis, said, no, maybe it's not consistent with this version of iPhone 5, but it would be consistent with like, you know, this application Picasso on, you know, in this certain situation. And they gave a bunch of examples showing how, no, that photo and the metadata on the photo is totally consistent with it.
Were there any other cell phones that pinged?
That's pretty much the only like, you know, more credible story. There's a couple of other stories about like maybe Philip Wood was communicating with someone while he was on the plane. Because people do wonder, is 2014, was there Wi-Fi on the plane? Like why were more people not trying to communicate? But the story, the message supposedly was that it was getting hot on the plane and that it felt, I think he said something about like it getting misty or something like that, which could imply like the fire type event related to the lithium ion batteries, is that there could have been some slow burn with this gas being released on the plane. The other thing too is that the phones were still ringing. Like this was proven on TV.
That was something I thought was pretty significant, that the phones kept.
Yeah, there was a bunch of stories about it. So one guy shows the phone ring at least once on TV. There was another situation where people were claiming that people were still logged in to like their social media apps and things like this, which would only have been possible if their phones were like online. What was the other situation?
So I guess to bring some clarity to it, if that plane crashed in the ocean and or the plane exploded or crashed in the ocean or sank, the phones would never ring. It would go right to voicemail.
No, it would go right to voicemail.
And they continued to ring for a week?
Like 4 days.
Okay.
And then 19 family members signed a statement because they were like begging the government to look into the fact that the phones were still ringing. Because like anyone thinks about that, you go, my plane can't be at the bottom of the ocean if the phones are still ringing. I mean, doesn't take much to realize that. If anybody disagrees, go throw your phone in the bathtub or whatever and give it a ring. It's not ain't gonna ring.
It's going to voicemail.
It's going straight to voicemail. Yeah. So, and this is where you realize, like, we from the outside perspective, and back then I was a CNN brain person myself who was just believing whatever I was told on TV. You know, we didn't even think about any of this. So we just thought these families are grieving, you know, and they're struggling to cope with the reality of their family member. No, they knew it was a cover up the whole time. That's why they were freaking out. That's why they were getting arrested. The officials were like text messaging them. I think the officials text messaged that they were going to tell them that their families were officially going to be, you know, deceased or whatever. They didn't even have the guts to go tell them face to face. So you could see why, as a family member, you can tell they're not being transparent.
Right.
You know, if you're being transparent, you would just be like, oh, we have nothing to hide. Here you go. But no, they were doing a cover up. Let's
go back to you mentioned the fire scenario. It's one of the things we kind of break down in Shadow Figures. And I won't give the conclusion of that. But the fire scenario is because mysteriously, 485 pounds of lithium batteries get on board on the plane right before it takes off.
Yeah. There's a mysterious cargo that gets on this plane. Okay. And there's this 487 pounds of lithium ion batteries. It might be the same thing, might be connected, might be a subsequent component of that. But that is just such a huge red flag. Like, here's the details about it too, is that they lied about this. People were asking, were there any dangerous cargo on the plane? Because they wanted to know, could this be an accident? People are trying to figure out what's going on. The Malaysian Airlines CEO didn't tell the truth about it until March 20th. This is 12 days after the plane disappeared. Why wait that long to say that there was these lithium ion batteries, plus hundreds of pounds of lithium ion batteries? And if you look at the ATSB report, which I've looked at, it's definitely not packaged safely. Like, these things look like like incendiary devices. They just like stack them together, put it in a cardboard box, throw it on the plane. Like, you know, and when I talk to people who are familiar with lithium ion batteries, they tell me that the biggest issue with them is that there's like manufacturing defects in them.
Yeah.
So even if you were to think it's, even if we think it's an accidental situation, there's a pretty high risk of an accidental problem happening with this. If you're just putting these batteries on the plane, putting them together that day, and then just putting them on the plane. And then when you're lying about it, that's when I'm really starting to get suspicious, especially when you don't tell the truth until after you've built this cover story of the plane going into the South Indian Ocean. Because if you tell people the next day that, oh, yep, 500 pounds of lithium-ion batteries, first thing people are going to do is they're going to go Google like I did and realize a bunch of planes had burnt up from lithium-ion batteries in the years before that, so much so that they banned them, that you cannot have lithium-ion batteries as cargo on passenger planes.
Yeah, because you can't have water suppression systems on a plane because you got to carry the water, right? And the weight of it. And so they have these halo systems, which just sucks the oxygen out, which are not effective
That's
for lithium.
Not good enough,
right?
no.
Lithium, because lithium will burn without oxygen.
And they use halon 1301, but halon 1301 is not good enough. But halon 1301 has bromine in it. And this was really important to Catherine T's sighting because bromine, if there's a chemical reaction happening and bromine is being released, it's like a orange gas. So it would explain why Catherine T was seeing this orange halo on the plane, is that they had been desperately trying to battle a controlled fire that they couldn't put out using all the tanks, probably all the tanks. They have two automated tanks, I believe, and then 3 or 4 manual tanks that the pilot can manually release. And one of these tanks washed up in the Maldives. Like, no question, washed up in the Maldives. It's a Boeing 777 fire suppression device. It can't be a coincidence that it washes up there March 25th, 2014. I FOIA requested the CIA and Navy about it. Navy said they didn't have anything about it. CIA said to be kept secret for Executive Order 13526. I've memorized that one because it's national security. And I'm going, why is the CIA covering up a Boeing 777 fire suppression device that washed ashore in the Maldives? Oh, well, somehow that thing fell out of the plane, when they were doing this. So the fire event too, I think to your point, what you were saying and what you guys have concluded is like, okay, if those videos are real and that's what's happening, I think we can clearly see smoke coming out of the plane. It could be exhaust, but the way it kind of stays there for a few seconds before it starts to disperse really feels to me like it's smoke. And it would also explain why this plane looks like it's about to land in the ocean is what I think is happening there. Is that would have definitely had to been some kind of planted device put on there for a specific purpose to not have the plane go down, but could have been a good backup plan for if the operation goes poorly, well, plane's just going to crash. And then you just say, oh, we don't know what happened, just crashed. So that was always kind of the theory that I had. Now, early on, I was open to more, okay, was it just totally accidental and maybe we were trying to rescue the plane? But once I figured out the Sierra Nevada Corporation Gorgon stare angle, I went, okay, this isn't a rescue.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that fact and like I said, I have we did the test on the show. I'm gonna save the part for the show. Like you have to watch the test we do on Shadow Figures with the fire scenario. I think it proves so much. So when it comes out, we'll make sure to let everybody know about it. But I think what we have here is just a very clear case that the government knows more than they're saying. I think the United States government was complicit in this, whether nefarious or for national security. And I always want to make the point, we talked about this yesterday. When we talk about these subjects, look, the word military industrial complex has gotten a really bad rap by people like me, because I'm always like the military industrial complex, and there's a side of the military industrial complex that I always will attack when you have neocons in Washington, D.C. that are profiteering off of starting wars, keeping wars going on, doing nefarious things. However, we are one of the greatest and freest nations in the world because of the military industrial complex, where we just sent those stealth bombers into Iran and stopped a potentially World War III because of the military industrial complex. So I never want to demonize the military industrial complex. I will continue to demonize those who abuse it for personal wealth and gain. But if we have a 0-point energy weapon that could teleport things and keep our national security, I want America to have the biggest, baddest weapons on the planet. But I don't want our government to abuse it. use it nefariously, or certainly don't want people in Washington, D.C. to war profiteer off of it. So I always want to make that super clear, that at least my position on that.
Yeah, that's where I would actually kind of lean back on you, because then that was one of the biggest issues I had right away when I realized, okay, this is Gorgon stare, wide area motion imagery. And I'm like, okay, this really is us doing this. It's like, where is the line? Where's the line between national security and the public disclosure, especially when dealing with something like this? Because just like you, I want us to be safe. And I'm realizing the reason why we live the way we do is because of this behind the scenes. You can't deny that. And we have to realize the world's not black and white. It's definitely shades of gray, but there has to be some level of accountability. I mean, the implication, what we see in those videos is so huge, like teleportation, plasma orbs that are fusion reactors. We're talking about free energy, green energy for the world. To me, it's like, okay, I don't know where the line is, but I know we're way past it. I know we're way past it.
We had, what, 239
and 239 people on the plane.
On board. And I think to me, that if you cross that line to where you're measuring you're putting human life as in the equation of an ROI for national security, you've crossed a line. And I think every one of those family members would agree with that. And if it was our family, we would, we'd feel the same way.
No, absolutely. And I guess the other question that I have is like, here's the thing, is that if you say it's national security, you can justify practically anything. This is what concerns me, is when I started digging into this, I find that, okay, 2014, Obama was president. Turns out there was a big CIA leak about there that we were drone striking people with 5 or 10% hit rates in terms of getting the target versus innocence. Yeah. And I'm going, oh, it seems like we got a little willy-nilly here with what we were picking our targets and things like this. And that's what concerns me, is that, okay, if you say it's national security, if you say we've got doomsday weapons that we can't let other people have, then you could justify any atrocity at that point. And now we're just straight up targeting engineers. Like, those aren't military people on that plane. That's a Malaysian Airlines civilian airliner. It even had me thinking about, Rob, I think, Robert J. O'Neill. He commented back in September of 2024 saying that Malaysian Airlines was never a mystery. It was a message or a warning to China. And that freaked me out, because I know who he is and I know he's a legit guy. And
there's a lot of people that said that this was a message to China as a show of force, a demonstration, like, we have this weapon and we have the ability to use it. And it's a capability we have, and to put them on warning. And
I would have received that warning.
Well, posturing in combat is effective. It's very effective. A show of force is a reason that, you do, before you drop bombs, sometimes you have a, F-16 fly over and, shake the sky and a show of force, and it's very effective. And, this could have been a show of force. So
does that make sense to you then, in that perspective?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense to me. And not out of the realm of possibility to show, like, hey, we have this capability.
Yeah, because there was a letter to me that I believe was posted January 9th, somewhere around that 2024, called A Letter to Ashton Forbes, Diego Garcia Whistleblower. And it is a weird letter, but it presents this same idea that it was like a parallel track that I was on, that this was a big espionage event, and that it was actually more than just us targeting the plane. It was that China was going to target the plane. China was going to take these people, and that we knew about it, and we set up this whole production and this whole operation in advance, that we knew they were going to defect. We knew China had leverage over at least the 8 Chinese nationals that were of those 20, and that we pulled this weapon out, and that we did it as a show of force. Now, we would never want those videos to leak, because you can reverse engineer the technology from those videos. Right. But if China's surveillance is not as good, they're just looking from a satellite, they're just going to know the plane disappeared. And they're also going to know that we covered it up and everybody believed the cover up. And that's probably the scariest part, right? Because what that would tell our adversaries is, next time you get on an airplane, we can just make it disappear, and we can just convince the world that, oh yeah, just had a malfunction and just vanished, and people will believe it. If I was Putin, I'd be scared by that. Heck, I'm still scared by that. I'm just a normal guy when I go get on an airplane, because who knows?
Yeah, who knows with you? Yeah, they might want to.
No, but that's a good point.
You might disappear on the way home from here.
People do ask me, though. They say, like, why are you still alive? This is all real. And I think that's actually a valid question to ask. Sure. I wonder more of, why has nobody just called me up to say, like, hey, stop talking about this, or even just threaten me overtly? Maybe they're afraid of the social media backlash, but I think that's actually that some of these people want this stuff out. Like
Yeah.
the Hal Puthoffs even maybe or Eric Davises of the world. The reason why these guys are like whistleblowers or whatever is I think they're so tied down with NDAs, especially if this is connected to nukes. Then these are like the most strict NDAs and agreements you could possibly have. They can't come out and say anything, otherwise their lives are destroyed or they go to prison.
Well, not only that, if it is a show of force, then you're actually talking about this is actually part of
It could help.
it's part of the exposure, and they're not going to admit it to the public, but it's really great that we're out here talking about this. Somebody in China's watching this and like, oh wow, this is real. If this episode convinces them this is real, it's actually effective part of the show of force, and so you may be.
I didn't even think about that.
You may
side
be
of
a contributor.
What do you think about what would be the what would be the protocol? Like, let's say you were in a special operation and it got exposed, and now like someone like me is like wants to interview you. Like, would it be like just complete silence? Like, what would be the move? Do you think?
Well, I mean, look, this when it comes to security and security clearances, the different levels, right? You have confidential, secret, top secret, or other things. So anyone involved in anything, that's high level. It's going to be a top secret clearance, right? A high level.
Yeah.
So top secret clearance, and then once you get into top secret clearance, you have different things like SAPs, special access programs, and if you're in a SAP, you're not even allowed to. Part of that is you're not even allowed to say that you're in a SAP, a special access program. So you have a top secret clearance, you're part of a special access program, and in conjunction with that or separate from that, you have what's called SCI, special compartmentalized information. And so the reason that the military does that, or the government, I said the military because that's my world, but the government does that, is this special compartment is protecting that information. And so there's only a few people, if you were in a SAP program with special compartment information, only a few people would know the whole picture, but other people would know fragments of it. So if I had a fragment of what I did, and for my job previously, I worked I was on this JSOC task force, and I was in a SAP program, and I had a SCI, top secret SCI. I knew I knew my part, I knew the totality of my part, but there's other parts of the SCI I didn't know. But there would have been people that knew all of it. So if I got either captured or compromised, or I became treason, committed treason because I was extorted, or whatever its case, I couldn't have compromised the whole program because I didn't know all of it.
See, that's why I set up like that. Like that's successful. It's really, I think that's where people don't understand. Like a lot of the academics, they think, how could you hide any of this stuff? The technology, the projects, right?
Well, no one knows all of it. Some people do, and then there's repercussions, right? You sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, as part of those, and they're lifelong as part of those getting those clearances, and so there are repercussions criminally for speaking out. And they aren't always enforced. I've seen plenty of people that have NDAs and I've talked about things like tactics and techniques, tactics and procedures from their jobs and things they shouldn't say, and they get away with it. For me, like because of my background, if you read my book, Saving Aziz, I talked about some of my operations. I sent it to the Pentagon. The Pentagon had to not only review my book, but they sent it to the different commands I was at. They sent it to different people, and the Pentagon came back with redactions of what I couldn't say. Is that
DOPSR review?
What's that?
Is that DOPSR review, or is that something different? I don't know. The UFO people say the DOPSR review when they explain that process. Okay,
yeah, just the Pentagon has a review process. And they had it for like 8 months.
Got it.
And so, and had I not did that, had I just wrote whatever I wrote and not let the Pentagon redacted it, because they redacted a lot, and put it out there, I could have been criminally liable for the information I put in there. So, there's consequences. So people are always going to be fearful of those criminal consequences. And there's that. And then sometimes people say stuff, but they don't know everything. Yeah. And so it's that in truth, the system that we have in place is actually effective to protect getting this information out.
Oh, absolutely. And I guess the other question I would ask you, kind of similar lines, is like, who would be ultimately responsible for an operation at that level? Because I look at it from the assets, what's being used. I can see an MQ-9, a Reaper, Air Force, I imagine. Gorgon Stare produced for the Air Force. I could imagine maybe the CIA sequesters some of that technology, so maybe they're doing it. There's a real human controlling the camera. I would assume they get selected from, SOCOM or JSOC or something like that for that. How do you think that plays out? And do you think like the president would have to sign off on an operation of this magnitude? Or do you think that's something that could be unilaterally done by like the CIA I assume it's CIA because it's a civilian airliner, it's foreign, and I don't think the military is targeting civilian airliners without intelligence being involved.
No, I get asked that a lot. Like, because of my background and some of the places I worked, they were like, does the military do like these assassination operations, stuff like that? The United States military, to my knowledge, and I've worked at some very high levels in special operations, and I've never seen the military utilized to do anything nefarious, especially revolving civilians. There's a lot of stuff. There's like these posse comitatus laws. The military cannot be used against U.S. civilians. First of all, exactly. It's illegal, and I have never seen it done away as. In fact, every time we've done anything inside the States, I've done these JTF-6 missions when I was younger inside the States. There's lawyers that come in and make sure you're briefed of what you can and can't do. You can't collect on civilians. There's a lot of regulation in that. Going out and killing civilians, like the U.S. military is not going to do that. Even abroad, if it would be abroad, like some kind of like control. Like it's going to be some kind of intelligence agency or government entity, and it would probably be done through contractors, right? It'd be contractors. There'll be special access programs and contractors doing that kind of work. But I hear, I talk to Dr. Stephen Greer a lot, who I'm friends with, so I'm not saying, but he talks about like the government doing a lot of these things that are outside the realm of the government. I have no evidence of that. He has a lot of things that he talks about. I have no evidence of that. In my perspective, to answer your question, I believe that something at this level that targeted civilians would have to be at the president's desk, and the president would have to approve it. It would be a government intelligence agency utilizing components of the United States military in a collaborative effort. But it would have the eyes of the president, and it would have the approval of the president. That's
I got to agree. And it is crazy part is Obama, the first time he ever spoke about that plane wasn't until March 19th. He waited 11 days to speak about the plane. There was 4 Americans on board. I mean, one was Philip Wood. He was the only adult American. There was 3 children who were technically Americans as well on board that plane. And Obama waited 11 days to talk about it. That to me is just weird. Like that screams, we got to come up with a cover story. I can't get caught in a lie, that kind of thing. And that's why I do think he knew about it. I'm just not sure whether or not he would have signed off on it ahead of time. But if people are interested out there, I'd say FOIA request where Obama was when that plane disappeared before and after, because there's a non-zero chance he was watching those videos in a secret area in the Pentagon or White House or whatever.
In the Situation Room, I look, like I said, if your theory is right, and the United States government was utilize a direct energy weapon or a teleport or teleportation, whatever you want to call it, to teleport this plane with 239 civilian passengers to Diego Garcia Military Base, and they were either killed or held hostage or still hostage, that would not have happened without the approval of the President of the United States. So
no, that makes sense. And Stephen Greer, by the way, I like his work a lot, actually. I think
same here.
He aligns the most with what I've independently kind of figured out. And I'm not biased towards any one person at all in the UFO community, but when he talks about these special access programs and this technology, absolutely. I totally align with what he's saying. And he actually recently came out, and I haven't spoken to him like personally in an interview. I spoke to him briefly one time a couple of years ago, but he said that he talked to his science advisors. I don't know. He didn't say their names, but he said that they think that's a real Einstein-Rosen bridge, a real wormhole in those videos.
He did. I've talked to him about this.
Oh, you did?
And he believes. He is 100% in line with your theory and believes this was one.
Yeah.
And his people do as well.
Wow. That's wild.
So, what I was speaking to a reference to him is, he would say this could happen outside the scope of Congress and outside the scope of the president because of these rogue, I use his words, these rogue programs within our government. And like I said, I have nothing to validate that, but I have nothing to devalidate that either. And he's pretty compelling in his case. And you can look at his archives. He has a lot of
people
stuff.
Should be looking at. I mean, how I found most of the Black Project engineers to find all the science was like videos of him interviewing them. He was the guy interviewing them in the early 2000s on this disclosure project. people like Hal Puthoff, Paul Sis, like these are not like people that are in the woo. Like these are guys that are black project engineers, physicists. Paul Sis was the one helping them develop the air breathing magnetohydrodynamic drives. And you can watch just interviews of him that are like, you know, all full science, you know, explaining the experiments and everything related to this stuff. So Dr. Greer gets a huge amount of respect from me for doing a lot of that. For me, where I draw the line, where I diverge from him is on the alien front. And it's not because I don't think aliens are necessarily real. I think Anna Polina Luna is just in the news going viral because she's talking about the interdimensional aliens and what have you. It's like, and I say,
which is a lot what Dr. Greer talks about.
Yeah, and he says a lot of the same stuff. And I say, my view on that, I take a little different stance. I say that's a psyop, but not necessarily because aliens aren't real. And also not because there's not an extra dimension. There has to be one for teleportation to work. I just think that they're kind of confusing people when you say that. You kind of leave it open to interpretation where then everybody's kind of going, oh, okay, well, here come the angels and the demons from the netherworld or whatever, right? Because that's what it sounds like when you say it like that. When you just really say, oh, no, there's an extra dimension, but that's just because all points in space and time are connected. So it's like a shortcut, right? Then you're not thinking of, oh, the aliens are coming from the other dimension. You're just saying, well, they're coming from somewhere else. It's just, you know, they found the shortcut to get here, like the wormhole, right?
Right.
And that's where I diverge from it. And the other side is like, sure, aliens exist. If we have teleportation technology and free energy technology and fusion technology, we're probably not the first people to figure that out. There's going to be some other civilizations out there. But why does that matter to me? What does that impact my life? What does that impact my worldview? My worldview already includes aliens existing somewhere else out there. Like that doesn't matter to me. Unless they're directly impacting our life, our politics, or what have you. It doesn't really matter. What does matter is that we've got free energy technology. Why am I going to work slaving away 80 hours a week? Why do we have 700,000 homeless people in our own country? Like we should be living like, you know, the Sultan of Brunei in our country where everybody's rich. We've got free energy technology, but to the point, you've got the elites or whoever it is who clearly thinks they're just more important than us, that they can hide this level of technology that, in my opinion, is crimes against civilization and humanity, that would move us up to an echelon where we could maybe interact, you know, with aliens. So for me, figuring out the 0 point energy technology will open the door to whatever the answer is of the alien phenomenon. Maybe they're coming, you know, from the Andromeda galaxy, like, you know, Dr. Greer says, Ambassador Bijou. Maybe they can teleport and they can get here, right? So,
well, one of the things that I really, you know, align with Dr. Greer on, and really is, he makes compelling cases. The reason why have we been? He does a documentary called, I think, The Lost Century.
Yeah, that's great.
And it's about the lost century, meaning that we have had this technology, 0 point energy technology, for over 100 years, and we've kept it from the population. And so, why would we do that? Why would we not have every home in the world have heat and fuel and green energy, right? And that's a sustainable energy. And he points to a very clear thing, and that's money. Money and power. And you know, if you introduce 0 point energy, it would completely eliminate the fossil fuel industry and all of the powers to be around the world. Their wealth is in the fossil fuel industry, and so it would eliminate it overnight.
It's a huge aspect of it. And Lost Century is another great one that one of the first ones I watched to really wake me up to that, because I thought, no way they could hide something for 100 years. I thought for sure the title of that movie must be just misleading. But no, it even goes further back than that. It goes all the way back to Tesla. Movement is energy. So everything we see moving is technically energy. That means there's infinite energy out there, especially now that we're understanding that space-time itself is not empty. It's more of like a lattice vibrating all the time. It's how we should be thinking of this space-time. And if that's the case, there's infinite energy out there all the time. And it goes back all the way, at least 100 years. So the question really shouldn't be, where are the aliens? The question should be, why are the aliens not talking to us? Probably because we're little ants. We're insignificant. And from the technological perspective, they're up here somewhere and we're still down here playing with fire. We're clapping every time Elon Musk lands another fire rocket that no one's ever going to use to go to Mars. Like, they just look at us like we're primitives, most likely. It would be how I would think of it. I think that's where people have to really get their minds around, is that if you really want to figure out what's the answer to the UFO phenomenon, what really will wake you up, is realizing that we're still down at the beginning. We're in the baby phase. We're still in the womb down here when it comes to technology. We're not at the most advanced we're going to get.
Right.
Like, we're looking at the future. If those videos are real, you know, fusion, all that stuff, the world's about to get to a really weird place. Like, what does the world even look like with no scarcity?
Yeah.
Like, if we can just have everything, well, how do we even center our government? I mean, think about all the political stuff that we face right now and what those questions look like in a world where we have like Star Trek replicators, for example.
Well, and we're as a species, humanity is holding itself back. I don't know if you know this, but you probably do. The U.S. Patent Office has the ability to seize only one type of patent, and where they have the authority to just step in, and that's energy.
Yep.
If you have a invention or a creation to do with energy, they have the authority to step in and seize that patent.
You have to actually say why.
Yeah.
Why is that the case? Why are they afraid of people producing energy? Well, maybe because there's a secret that we can produce infinite energy, and that might be dangerous too.
Yeah.
So one other angle is absolutely greed is a huge aspect of this, but it's just there's more to it than that. Even if it was just greed, it would eventually leak out. We'd eventually get it. But there's also like this national security, this NatSec view of it too, which is, well, if you can produce infinite energy, you can make a black hole theoretically. So this means that these A-bombs that we had in 1945, that's just a little child's toy compared to what we can really do. This is where like Salvatore Pais has become a friend of mine, U.S. Navy engineer. I'm pretty sure he works on nukes. He can't probably say, even if he does, but he does some disclaimers before all of his interviews. He's pointed out that we can amplify energy. And he's trying to tell people that like we can make weapons that make nukes look like nothing, And perhaps my speculation has been that I think that when we developed the H-bomb, we figured out that we can actually electrify the vacuum, polarize the vacuum. We can manipulate space-time with these huge energetic bursts that we were creating. And if we figured that out, then that became the big secret. And that's the big secret around nukes. And then nukes are connected to energy, they're connected to the Department of Energy. This also then explains why the Invention Secrecy Act and the Atomic Secrecy Act prevent these inventions from coming out. Is we essentially took one whole path of our technology and we said, we're not going to learn this. We're not going to learn fusion and gravity manipulation and free energy. We're still going to be able to do everything else electromagnetically, but we're going to blind ourselves on that one aspect.
Ashton, this show is called The Resilient Show. Usually most episodes are about stories of people that overcome hardship. They've, faced, demonstrated amazing courage over, in impossible scenarios. But I love to do episodes like this that provide information and awareness, because I believe that, if you're informed and you're aware of things going on in our world, you become more resilient. Mm-hmm. And so I always ask every guest at the end, based on your experience and what you do, and what is a lesson on resiliency that you could share with the audience?
The lesson is you can do anything that you want to do in this world. You can be anything that you want to be in this world. Somebody tells you can't do something, tell them they're wrong. Somebody tells you something's not possible, tell them they're wrong. Everything is possible. Right on.
Awesome. It was awesome to have you on. I really enjoyed working with you on Shadow Figures. Can't wait for you guys to see Shadow Figures come out and the episode on MH370. Love the work you're doing. And we have amazing sponsors that make this show happen. Smith & Wesson Firearms, Vortex Optics, Gators Eyewear, Allied Wealth Management. We have a supplement company I work with called BioPro. BioAccelerators, one of our partners and actually they're in Arizona, but they're stem cell clinic down in Columbia. So we have just some incredible partners, and we love to load up our guests with gifts. So we're gonna give you a Mighty Oaks Foundation swag bag from our Mighty Oaks Foundation. We give you some Gators eyewear to go out in the range and shoot. But I understand you never owned a gun before.
Nope, it's my first one.
And so if you come to Texas, or you're in Texas right now, you have to leave with a gun. So we're gonna our friends at Smith & Wesson are give you your very first gun. We're gonna work together and pick out a gun for you, and we're gonna throw some Vortex optics on it, get you behind some Gators eyewear, and we'll get you out in the range shooting.
Thank you very much. Can't wait.
But next time we come out, we'll have to get on the range, because this trip we didn't get to do it. So for those who have not done so yet, please join our Patreon family. It's one of the best ways you can support the show is to join Patreon, and you get to hear some extra content. So I'm going to be jumping over to Patreon with Ashton. We're going to do some rapid fire questions and questions that you guys as Patreon members or those who are Patreon members send over to us to ask to our guests. So you always get a chance to ask questions directly to the guest and meet with me. Some Patreon members will get to meet with me once a month on a live Zoom call. So make sure you join Patreon. If you have not done so yet for this episode, please like, comment, share it, get it out as far and wide as possible so we can get Ashton's research out there. And we will see you next week. God bless and stay resilient. Hey, what's up, Resilient family? I am so grateful for each of you who tune in every week to hear our episodes. We have such incredible guests and topics that I am passionate about, our team's passionate about, and we could not do it without you. So we're thankful for you. We love you. We appreciate you locking arms with us to be more informed, to become a more resilient community. And I want to invite you to become a tighter part of that community by joining us on Patreon. If you go to our show notes below, you can click the link and get dialed into our Patreon and get extra content weekly. You can join for $15 a month and get behind the scenes footage, get closer access to me. I have monthly Zooms that I'll be doing with some members of the community. And so we'd love to get more involved. Again, go below in the show notes and click the link and join today.